calls for sensible gun control. Many have even suggested arming teachers on school campuses. What is your idea of sensible gun control, and should teachers be allowed to carry guns on campus? And let's start with you, Sean.
Well, my idea of sensible gun control, because you might remember we have a Second Amendment that lays down the rules as to how conservative we have to look at this. The fact of the matter is, gun control is not the issue. Mental health is the issue. And when it comes to teachers, look, my sister's a principal in this town. So not every teacher is comfortable around weapons, nor should we ask them to be. But we do have teachers that are either former military, have training, however they came about it, and for those teachers that are willing to arm themselves and willing to protect the people around them, I think we ought to take advantage of that and arm them and train them.
Sean, the privilege of a very quick follow-up question. You say it's not about gun control, but on Friday morning when we were on the air, we had the breaking news out of Santa Fe, Texas, at the high school. We had a young person who had 2 guns that belonged to his father. So the literal control of those guns by the father was abandoned. The father didn't control his weapons, didn't lock them, didn't secure them. His son took them, got them in his hands, took them to school, and killed 10 people. In Parkland, I think the guns belonged to the brother of the shooter. Another example of where the literal control, gun control, was lost, and those guns were not kept in a protective place. Are these not important issues?
I'm so glad you asked that. Of course they're important issues. Every one of us lives in California, and if the idiot father that had let his son go to school with a shotgun and a pistol lived in California, he'd be facing a criminal charge, and the prosecutor that was up here before me would be taking the man to jail. You are required to lock your weapons in California. That doesn't mean who is or isn't allowed to own them if you're a responsible adult and you're not mentally ill. You're required to lock them down. I am, you are, and if they're locked down and children don't have access to them, perhaps we wouldn't have some of these very problems we have.
Thank
you. The question is about gun control, but it's more about, for me, it's about keeping our kids safe. I work in El Segundo, so I drive down El Segundo Boulevard on my way to the freeway, and I pass Hawthorne High School every single day. Lucifer High School also, and when I take alternate routes. Those schools are completely surrounded by gates and fences. But I live here in Brea. We have brand new schools that are not protected. We got to harden our schools. That's one of the key things that we can do immediately is when we're building schools and doing improvements is harden these schools. The gun control issues, I'm willing to look at bump stocks, take away the gun stocks, that's fine with me. There's reasonable changes we can make, but I'm military. I'm still in the military, that's why I got the short haircut. So I'm an expert on the 45 and a sharpshooter on the M16, and I know how to use my weapon, and I think that if we train people, and that's good enough gun control for me. Thank you.
First of all, I think it's very tragic what's happening with our school children, with these school shootings. My heart goes out to the families who have lost loved ones. Do you know what? If you look at America, this is bigger than mental health, and this is bigger than just gun control, because we have lost the breakdown of the family. People no longer have responsibility. They no longer teach their children correctly, right? So we need to actually look at, thank you, we need to actually look at some common issues here. How do we build back the family? How do we instill values? How do we instill respect? There's issues that are much broader than just mental health and does someone have access to a weapon. So we need to begin to look at how we recreate the family process, how we instill values, how we instill respect. But I also believe that teachers should be armed. To me, when you say a school with a gun-free zone, that invites someone into that area. We need to make sure that we have protection for our young people. I would fight for those types of laws on the books. I have 3 teenagers. I worry about them when they're in school. So I obviously feel this very deeply and very closely. I want to make sure that every child goes home at night. Thank you.
Every time shooting happens, it breaks my heart, especially the recent one that happened in Santa Fe High School. First of all, my heart goes out to the parents who lost their lives, the children's lives there. But you know, again, we're talking about gun control issues. We need to, I agree with some of the comments that's already been made. We need to deal with the fundamental issues of why people are using guns to, you know, go on those shooting sprees. We need to address the mental health issues, which is why I want to make sure that we have additional funding to take care of, you know, the mental health issues by providing federal funds to take care of the facilities that treat these people. But also we need to address the issue of why the information is not shared. When we do the background check system, currently the states are not mandated to share this information that we get from background checks. So we need to start there and then make sure that we have so many laws that we need to follow those. So again, I think that's where we need to start. Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Sam Jamal, and as the only Democratic candidate on stage here in the Nixon Library, I think we've gone back in time to what the 39th District was when Nixon was president a little bit. That's right. But we're changing in our district, and the change really comes down to folks want solutions and folks want answers on issues. And when it comes to gun safety, what do you look at the big picture here? We haven't updated our gun laws in decades. You can go across state lines and buy a gun at a gun show without a background check. And you get more of a check for the fruits you bring across state lines than a gun in your car. That's a problem. We're not updating our systems, but then when you look at the mental health and school safety issue, we're not funding our schools, nor are we funding mental health. The Trump budget actually cut mental health funding. The Trump tax reform bill added $1.5 trillion to our deficit. We're not going to have money for this stuff on its own. We have to invest in mental health. We have to invest in education. But then we also got to pass comprehensive gun control legislation that focuses on universal background checks. If you're on a terrorist watch list, you shouldn't be able to buy a gun. We should have a background check for that.
Yeah!
You shouldn't be able to have a gun. We should have a background check for that. And so we need to focus on solutions and update our laws.
We need to be kind to all the candidates because Sam Jamal is pretty brave being the only Democrat on the stage today. So please don't judge him.
Yeah, no worries.
If you don't agree, that's okay. Phil, next.
Hi, I'm Phil Liberatore, and I'm pro-Second Amendment. Let's make no mistake about that. I think we really need to arm every teacher in school. I really think that's the answer. Because if these kids know these teachers have the guns, they're not going to try this trick anymore. I think we're sick and tired of this, and we're letting these kids get away with this, and it's ridiculous. It's horrendous. And of course we need background checks. We need to put checks in place. Some of these kids were mentally ill. The kids knew about it. They were talking crazy. They should have been reported. They should have been looked upon. They should have been examined. I mean, we need to enforce some of this stuff that we already have on the books, and let's just arm our teachers. That's what I say.
I'm Bob. You know, I notice in Europe, where they have some of the strongest gun control on the planet, when somebody gets in a car and mows down 15, 20 people on the sidewalk, you don't hear it clamoring to outlaw cars, right? And let's just stipulate, in California, we have some of the toughest gun laws in the nation, if not the toughest. So let's just stipulate that. By the way, Sam, thanks for providing some contrast for us here. It helps. But I appreciate that with over 300 million guns in the United States, outlawing guns, if we stopped all the sales of every one, would still have a problem. So we have to figure out how to make sense out of this. And I think Governor Abbott of Texas had a reasonable approach. And what did he say? He didn't talk about banning guns. He said, let's get cool heads together and figure this out. When I was a kid, we didn't have fences around schools. Somewhere along the line, we figured out that people would wander on campus and haul our kids off, and we started building fences. Now that we see we have fishbowls, literally, that people come and shoot unarmed people without the means for them to escape or anybody else to fight back, then we need to also counter that. So I think cooler heads need to prevail. We'll figure this out, but it's not more gun control.
All right. I thought I'd come here so I could see you guys, so I could see all these faces. You know, when somebody runs for office, you want to look them in the eye and see their face. Question, obviously time consideration is not for everyone, So we'll go with Sean. Sean, would that be okay? Sean Nelson, if you wouldn't mind answering this. Young Kim, if you would take this question. Bob Huff. And yeah, Sam. We'll take Sam, a little Democratic spice. The President of the United States is like a very incredible guy. The President of the United States is a very polarizing guy. And people either, in a lot of ways, love or, I don't want to say hate, it's a word I don't like to use. People have very strong feelings about President Trump. And I read that Republicans running for Congress all across America, some of them aren't quite sure how to really navigate the Trump waters. Do they go out there fully, wear the MAGA hat and say they endorse Donald Trump, or do they stand back because some of the comments that he made, for example, about John McCain, or some of the other comments they feel are inappropriate, they don't want to go all the way there with Trump. So he certainly is our president. There's no doubt about that. He's certainly running for re-election. As congressional candidates, and most of you Republican, how do you handle the Trump question when it comes to you, when you're out on the trail? We can start with Stuart, if you'd like.
Okay, so it's not Sean, it's not Stuart, but it's not his fault because I didn't introduce myself. I'm Stephen Vargas, Stephen C. Vargas. C is for Congressman. Remember that, please.
Steve, I'm sorry, I apologize to you.
So listen, I am military. I am currently serving as a Navy reservist. Thank you.
And thank you for your service.
So I have deployed 3 times since 9/11. Did a year in Iraq. And when I joined, it was 2003. And so I served under President Bush. I got promoted from an enlisted man to an officer, to a chief warrant officer, by President Obama. And President Obama was my commander-in-chief. So I absolutely respected my commander-in-chief. I am currently lieutenant, and I absolutely respect my commander-in-chief, which is Donald Trump, Donald J. Trump. I support him in the general election, and I support him today.
Yes, I get that question a lot, and even when I was running for my re-election for State Assembly, they tried to put me and tie me to Donald Trump. It even called me, Young Kim is just like Donald Trump. But you know what, just look at me, I'm not Donald Trump. First of all,
I put that together, actually, looking at it.
yeah, you know what,
do you think as a woman you get that question more than male candidates?
I don't know why they do that, but you know, it's an obvious distinction right there. But I tell everybody that I'm running as my own person because you know what, I'm running to represent the 39th Congressional District. This district is very diverse. And also, who would have thought that Korea will be front and center? It's something that I was working on as a congressional staff working for Ed Royce for over 2 decades, right? His leadership, we need to congratulate him for his decisive leadership and the different results that he's bringing. It's very refreshing, right? I mean, for someone, as an immigrant from South Korea, seeing what is happening in the Korean Peninsula, the fact that even though today President Trump announced that he's going to scrap the idea of actually delaying, I think it's going to be delayed. I don't think it's going to be scrapped altogether. But this is something that I never thought we'll see in my life, especially as running for a member of the, the congressional seat. So I'm going to bring my experience and work with the president in order to make sure that there is a peaceful conversation in the Korean Peninsula. And his leadership is also amplified by the fact that members of Congress in the United States, like Congressman Ed Royce, has worked on the North Korea Sanctions Act that brought a lot of pressure on him, that made it happen. So first we see what's happening between the South and North Korean leaders meeting together, and that also led to the potential conversation that we were about to have with President Trump and Kim Jong-un. These are the issues, ladies and gentlemen, which is really important. As we deal with the domestic issues, talking about education, jobs, economy, transportation, these are all important issues. But you need a representative who also understands those issues. How many of us on this stage can say you went to North Korea to deal with these issues? I did.
Don't all at once, please.
Oh, yeah. So, yes, when I get that question asked, I say, you know what, I will work with the president, and he is our president, and we need to stand with him to make sure
Well, obviously I don't get the question of how you're going to distance yourself from Donald Trump because I'm a Democrat. I wake up in the morning, I'm running away from his Twitter feed. But I want to explain quickly why I'm here, and this ties into it. This election isn't about Donald Trump. This election isn't about Ed Boyce. It's about us and what kind of future we want to bring. And I'm here today, and I know some in this room are not going to vote for me, but I'm fighting to represent you. And I promise you all, listen to you. We will hold a town hall once a month when I'm in Congress. I'll make sure you guys get your answers, and when you disagree with me, I'll sit down, you can yell at me all you want, we'll figure out how to work together and solve problems. Because what's going on right now, and this is how you get the current dynamic, our country's very divided. We're also in a situation where Washington seems like a much far away place for a lot of folks. It doesn't seem like they're focused on the issues that we're all concerned about, and we're not listening. We're not going into rooms full of Democrats if we're a Republican. We're not going into rooms full of Republicans if we're a Democrat. Well, I'm here because I want to make sure I'm representing the entire district. I want to make sure I'm representing the entire district. And I think we can do more in this election than just the divisions we see in Washington. I think we can focus on how do we build the middle class again for the next generation. How do we really build our community? And there are divisions up here, but I think we can all work together. So I'm looking forward to that conversation.
Thank you.
Finally, Bob.
So the whole reason why this has become the #1 targeted seat in California and one of the top seats in the nation is because Hillary Clinton beat Donald Trump in the 39th Congressional District. Now there's a few of you fans, but you're just a few of you. So that's the reason why. So I talk about my record. For 10 years, I've been fighting against illegal immigration. 10 years ago, 12 years actually in the legislature, but 10 years ago I had a 5-bill package, including trying to outlaw sanctuary cities. Now I couldn't get through the liberal legislature in Sacramento, but that's a fight that continues on year to year to year, and you have standard bearers. Now we got a president that embraces this. We have 2 houses of Congress that talk about it. We need to build some consensus to actually get some things done, and I'd like to go back there to help break up the logjam.
And we do want to pick up on, for the remaining candidates, this question about sanctuary cities and sanctuary state. That is on the minds of a lot of people. The question essentially is, we've seen what's happened in California, that Democrats in Sacramento have passed legislation signed by the governor that seems to say there should be limited cooperation with ICE, if any, on these people who would be deported. And they talk about their arguments. They say, look, we want to build a community where people who may be victims can come forward and not feel like they'll be deported. So I would like the remaining candidates, John Cullum, Sean Nelson, Dr. Herbert Lee, and Phil Liberatore, to talk a bit about your thoughts on sanctuary state. And think of it in terms of your new position, should you win it, a member of Congress representing this state, but also really looking at it from the federal level. Let's start with Phil Liberatore.
Well, this is just ridiculous, folks. Sanctuary city, sanctuary state. It's a free-for-all for the criminals, the undesirables, and it's just ruining our lifestyle here. And we just need to enforce the laws that are on the books. We need to eliminate this nonsense called sanctuary. I mean, this is just unheard of. These guys need to be locked up, put away. We need to enforce the laws on our books. We need to prosecute the criminals. I mean, this is a free-for-all, and I'm just sick and tired of it. I'm sure you guys are sick and tired of it. And we need to put a stop to it immediately. And I want to do that.
Sean.
All right, so of all people on the stage, I'm actually the one that has to deal with this right now. Orange County, maybe you don't know, is the 6th largest county in the United States. It'd be larger than 20 states. So it's our jail personnel. If you heard from the governor earlier, a lot of people misunderstand what this sanctuary state, look, I don't know what that means to you, but I can tell you what the bill means, and it's all about incarcerated inmates. And Larry, I've had the privilege of being on your show, but the big misunderstanding, pro and con, you get all these people arguing that mothers are afraid to walk their children to school and they're worried about being rounded up. Folks, they don't know what they're talking about because that has nothing to do with the law. The law deals with incarcerated people. What has that got to do with mothers walking their kids to school? These people rounded themselves up. That's why they're in jail. And our county sheriff, the first 90 days of this year, facts matter. 244 people were let out the front door that we knew ICE wanted to put hands on, but we were not allowed, not to do ICE's job, not for me to spend your tax money, doing federal immigration enforcement. We weren't allowed to cooperate. We weren't even allowed to answer a question. And that is not only ridiculous, it's unconstitutional, which is why the County of Orange, we didn't pass a resolution, we didn't pass a meaningless vote. With my leadership, having read the complaint March 6th, we are the only ones I'm aware of. We have filed to be a party in the lawsuit. Our hearing is Election Day, and that means that on Election Day, our sheriff, our men in green, because they don't wear blue, get to actually step forward and offer the sanity that's not available by the state, because remember, they don't want this enforced. The federal government just knows the phone's not ringing. We are the people, our law enforcement folks, the sheriff that patrols this town. These are the folks that have to deal with these knuckleheads when they're back on the street, when they should be held and walked straight to the border or given a long plane ride on.
I think it's appalling that we have a sanctuary state. Absolutely, we should. Citizenship is crucial. That's what's really important. We are giving illegal immigrants priority over United States citizens, and we need to change this process. The problem is on our politicians. Politicians continue to make bad legislation. On the stage today, I'm a Washington outsider, I'm not a politician. I stand on the stage today with those who have served the city council and supervisor and assembly and the state. What have they done for us? This is why we're in this problem, because current legislators do not make laws that work with your interests. They make laws for their self-interest and their special interests. As your representative, I want to go to Washington, D.C. and be your voice. Someone with common sense, who represents the people and does what's right for the people, whether it be sanctuary cities or anything else, to support you and what you deserve. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Larry, Sheriff Joe, my friend Sheriff Joe is coming to Yoga Linda Community Center tomorrow at 5:30, and we're going to talk about this issue in detail, so please come.
Okay, next question involves North Korea. Young Kim just brought this up, and the question will be for Sean Nelson, for Steve Vargas, for John Cullum, and for Young Kim. The question is, should the president feel embarrassed today? Did Kim Jong-un win this matchup in foreign policy, or is this a win for the president because he now backed away from the table and has a bargaining chip? What do you make of this? Sean Nelson, we'll start with you.
I make of it we got exactly who we elected. He is a shrewd negotiator. He's dealing with a regime that is notorious for making outlandish, ridiculous statements, and he has to lay down the law, which it looked as though they were doing, that you cannot threaten us, even if it's accidental, even if it's a ridiculous old braggadocio of old days. We are not going to go to the negotiating table with these little pipsqueaks in North Korea rattling a saber that the US of A is going to cower because they might tune us up in a fight. We can help these unfortunate people live a much better life, and I hope that Donald Trump gets the opportunity, but Donald Trump is not going to step into a room at a disadvantage, nor should he. These people need our help, they deserve our help, and I think our president's smart enough to realize if he treats them with dignity, but is stern, maybe they'll come to their senses, and for the first time in several generations, actually have a future for people that are starving, because they're not allowed to get the help they deserve. Donald Trump was right today, and I think it's far from over, and I think this is going to end in a win, exactly as was forecast 2 weeks ago. It's just not going to be on the timeline we thought.
Jennifer, I think I'll be short because all of us are, I'm sure, are in agreement on this. This was straight from The Art of the Deal. So he's a strategic thinker, and that's what he's doing. He needs to put more pressure on China just to keep things going, and Russia. So I think with that three-pronged approach, we'll get what we need.
Yes, thank you. I think, is there a follow-up question? I'm sorry. No, I believe that Donald Trump did exactly what was needed today. It showed that America has strength, right? We are the United States of America, and no one screws with the United States of America, right? I'm a pro-Trump candidate. I think the President's doing an outstanding job, and so we need to continue to support our administration and continue to support America. Thank you.
Young man, I remember 1992 Agreed Framework. That was to make sure that North Korea does not continue to develop weapons of mass destruction in exchange for humanitarian assistance, energy assistance, all kinds of, even energy assistance. But over the last 20 plus years, what we've seen is continuing the broken promises by North Korea. And we keep giving them everything that they asked for. In return, we got nothing. So we have no one but ourselves to help North Korea become the nuclear state that it is. So that's what we're dealing with. Now, over the last several decades, and also working with different presidents, Republican and Democrats, they have not been able to contain North Korea. And we give them more. So now, what President Trump has done today, announcing that he's not going to go through with the June 12 summit, I think that's, again, another sign of a decisive leadership that is coming out of the White House, especially when it comes to foreign policy. He should not be embarrassed or anything like that. We should applaud the decision that has been made, because you know what? He is going to bring North Korea to a negotiation someday, soon or later. But we're going to do it our way. We're not going to bring North Korea or give them anything that they would ask for. They have broken all the promises. Let's make sure that we keep America safe and make sure that we help Korea come to a peaceful Korean peninsula.
Thank you,
But we have to do it our way.
Thank you. Larry Marino.
A couple of quick questions. This is a raise of hands. How many of you support the death penalty? Raise your hand if you support the death penalty. Is there anyone who, hands down, anyone who doesn't support the death penalty, raise your hand. And tell us your reason against the death penalty.
We have a long history. We're better than this, I guess, is what the best way to put it. I grew up Catholic, and my faith, I disagree with the death penalty, because we do have to make sure that we're not just doing something because it sounds like the way to do it, on whether or not it actually has a high cost, because death penalty cases go years and years into our system, and you end up spending a lot of money litigating these cases through the appeals process. Well, we could be better using our money to help rehabilitate folks when they're in there, and also just put them behind bars if they're going to be in there for life.
Yeah, I would like a couple of you to kind of respond to that. Bob Huff, talk about the death penalty. You've heard our Democrat today talk against it. You raised your hand for it. Why?
Well, I don't know if the death penalty deters people in the future from committing crime, but I know it deters that person from committing crime.
About the death penalty, your views on the death penalty.
I'm all for death penalty.
I don't know.
I mean, if you kill another life, you deserve to die. There's no question about it. We need to enforce the death penalty. We need to reinforce it and bring it back.
Quick question on education funding. I don't want to get into the weeds here, but in the federal government, there are dollars that come to the states, and I want to ask, raise your hand if you would cut federal funding from current levels to California. Raise your hand. Federal funding in education, if you would cut any dollars coming to California. Raise your hand if you would keep federal funding in education the same. Raise your hand if you would want to increase federal funding to education in California.
I don't make a comment on that. Our children deserve the best, and we don't give them that. So by cutting funding, what are we doing? We're taking away from the children who deserve it the most. We need to reform how we do education in this state. STEM, for example, science, technology, engineering, and math. We need to teach our children to be the leaders of tomorrow, and we don't do a very good job of that. So the way that funding is structured, it needs to be changed to ensure that it gets to the children and that we have the best educated people in this state.
I just like to chime in because the question was specific about federal funding. So two of my oldest daughters, I have 5 daughters, they just moved to Texas about a month and a half ago and took 6 of my 8 grandbabies with them.
You don't have a chance,
oldest
Steve
grandchild,
Vargas.
which is 11, he just got student of the month after a month and a half of being in Texas and he called my wife and he says, in Texas, 2 + 2 is 4. Because we have he's a super smart kid and he was so frustrated with 4.2 or 3.8 = 4. So if California is willing to change the way they do business here and apply with the way we do it at the federal level, I would give them more money.
All right, Brian. We have.
I think Sam has a quick one. Sam, 30 seconds.
Our economy is changing. You go to the grocery store, machines are checking out your groceries. We're soon going to have trucks drive themselves. We're dealing with automation and artificial intelligence in many different ways. We need to increase funding for education and job training, so we have to make sure our workers can compete in this changing economy. We're also dealing with global competition. If we cut education funding or even just keep it at the current level, we're not going to get there. Right now, I'll also say in California's defense, Steve, we're the 5th largest economy in the world. We must be doing something right to get there.
All right. My final question for you guys. Stand by, sir, please.
Okay.
My final question for you guys. Sam, you're the only Democrat. I'm one of the rare Democrats in talk radio. I've been privileged to do it for 25 years here in Los Angeles. And one thing I've noticed in the more than 20 years I've been talking on the radio in LA is that the business of politics, Republicans practicing the business of politics, have not gotten better at the art of politics. Republicans have gotten worse at the art of politics. This manifests itself in, for example, I think we're on year 14 of a Republican not being elected to statewide office in the state of California. That's a political problem. It seems to indicate a disconnect between the Republican Party and many of its candidates and the voters in California. To those of you, Phil Liberatore, my dear friend, who's a very enthusiastic Republican, how do you bridge that gap? Are you tapping into some sort of enthusiasm this midterm year that you haven't seen before? Is the tide changing?
I think the tide is changing because the folks out here are sick and tired of what's going on in the state of California. I think we're going to see a change this election year, and it's all because of you guys. We need more of these candidate forums. Thank you, Brian and Jennifer, for bringing it to the Richard Nixon Library. Thank you for having these candidates come out. But I tell you what, I think we need to educate the public because our messaging, the Republican messaging, is just not getting across. There's minorities out there that think we're just mean and intolerant, which is not true. We love these people, we love every person, and we want the very best for them. You can see what Donald Trump is doing. This country is so much greater. He's created 1.9 million jobs. The African-American unemployment rate is the lowest ever in the history of California. Our unemployment rate is at a 17-year low. The stock market is up $6 trillion. ISIS is on the run. And home prices are up a 10-year high. Let's hear it for Donald Trump.
Phil's blood pressure is also up. Thank you, my friend. Jennifer Horn.
Sean.
Well, because you've done this for 25 years, we're going to just beat a confession out of you. You know better than to suggest that the rhetoric's changed. Everybody in this room knows that there is only one group of people that can afford to politic day in, day out, year in, year out in a state with 38 million people. And the public employee unions are probably about to get a shellacking in the Janus case. And if you want to ask what we can do to change the rhetoric, if you defund the union's ability to strong-arm their own employees like school teachers, and force them to back candidates, how can anyone that's not backed by public employee unions even compete at the state level and get a message out when you've got groups whose lifeblood depends day in, every day on rolling the state legislator to their view of the world? And until that changes, and it's probably about to, you've all heard of the Janus case, get ready. The Supreme Court's going to rule in the next 30 days, And you're probably going to see that change everything more because people's voices will be equally heard for a change.
Interesting.
And the billionaires will have everything they want.
Okay, so could you give me the question again, please?
The question truncated. The question is that Republicans in California have gone for almost 15 years without winning statewide office in California. What are Republicans not doing right when it comes to politics and luring votes in this state?
So, well, first of all, I want to talk about this district. This district is 35.5% Republicans, 34.2% Democrats, and 30.2% NPP. So most of those NPPs are former Republicans. So yes, they've left the party, but they're still solid. They're still good people. They're still strong people. We need to reach out to those middle people, not moderate, because you got to stand for something. And I'm still a proud Republican. But I think that if we just keep on reaching out to those people, bring them back to the party, we'll make some difference.
Thank you, John.
I really think back to responsibility. We stop talking about responsibility and want to point blame. The voters do not get out and vote. I think in Orange County it was like 27.9% turned out. The voters need to get out. You have all the power. The voter has all the power. I ask that you get out and that you vote. That you want everyone to vote. You forget how precious it is. This is what our military fights for. This is what this country was founded on. The freedoms to select representatives, and you have all the power. I would ask that you get out of those chairs on June 5th and go vote for John Collins for Congress.
Thank you, John. Young Kim.
When Republicans try to do good things, come up with good policies, we've had, yes, to your question, since 1996, when we did the warfare reform and immigration reform, we didn't have the surrogates or the Republican legislators or our party going out and really getting into the communities to explain what we're doing, why we're doing. And that is what you're referring to. We need to do more and better job. But you know what? It's changing now. That was in the 90s, that was in the 2000s now. The district that we're running in right now is very, very diverse. The district is now seeing the changing waves and different demographics that are changing. So when you have a candidate that is running that looks like that, like me, 1/3 Asian Americans live in the 39th Congressional District. Now, I'm going around meeting with them, staying engaged in that communities. That's what people are going to see. We got to do more. But it's not just 1 month or 2 months before the election. We need to do this on a regular basis. And I've done it for the last 26 years. People have seen me in the communities, and I have done this when I was in the state assembly. We need to, by doing it in our offices, we need to engage and bring more people of the diverse, different ethnicities, and we send them out to the groups that you think are typically Democratic groups, that don't be afraid to get out there and meet with them. If you think it's just the Republicans and you're going to talk to them, you're not. You're just talking to the same people. You're speaking to the choir. We need to do a better job of getting out there. It's changing. The Asian Americans are engaged. The Latino Americans are engaging. This is the year we're going to change and grow our party.
Thank you, Yan. Well done. Oh, Sam, I'm sorry, Sam Jamal. And then Bob.
Public employees unions. How about let's invest in our students and train them for the jobs of the future? And then we have a president who wants to cut healthcare reform. What happens if you have a pre-existing condition under the Republican Trump care last year? You lose your health care. That's an untenable position for folks here. The reality is we need solutions. Folks want solutions moving forward, and folks want less division. And that would be my advice on this.
Thank you, Sam.
Sam, we're going to build that wall now, buddy.
So just to clarify, the question was about how to reach out more. Okay.
I think so.
So I believe as Republicans, we need to get out of our comfort zone and to get out to where other people are and communicate, person to person, group to group. When I was Senate Republican leader, I put this into practice. My first hire as a communications director was Hector Barajas. My second hire is Jackie Wynn. as a press secretary. I hired a young black kid out of UC Davis, and we started going to areas Republicans haven't gone. And there's a lot I can tell you about that, but at the end of the day, I was proud that we wrestled back 2 seats from the Democrats. So we won Janet Nguyen here in Orange County, 8-point Democrat advantage. And up in Central Valley, 22-point Democrat advantage seat, Andy Vodak. Why? Because we went to where people were, we communicated with them the issues that mattered to them, and when we resonate like that, we find they agree with us and we can win elections.
Thank you so much. Now, your congressional district is being eyed by Democrats to flip, right? We hear about the blue wave coming, and just a yes or no question, no answer, really yes or no, because Travis Allen is here. We've got a yes or no. Do Republicans keep the House in November? Sean, we'll start with you.
Yes.
Absolutely yes.
Do Republicans keep the majority in the House come November?
We absolutely keep the majority in the House.
Yes.
Nope, and I look forward to those. I look forward to those Wednesday town halls, and I look forward to putting a check on Donald Trump and moving our economy forward and building the middle class.
Bill Tory.
Vote Liberty, vote Libertory, we're keeping majority.
Yes.